Recording in progress.
Welcome into the latest episode of Betting the Pitch. I'm your host, _G Warner, on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. Today, we are going through tonight, the German Bundesliga futures preview episode. I'm going to come over each of the new additions to the league, plus go over transfer talk and all those sort of things as I did in the last 4 episodes I did for the other top 5 European soccer leagues, Ligue 1 in France, England's Premier League, Spain's La Liga, and Italy's Serie A. Germany starts this weekend, 1 week after the rest of the European calendar. So we're going to get into it. We're going to find a best bet for the entire season. So we have something gripping us until May, and hopefully we will be able to find a profitable angle. I'm going to do that 1 minute pick at the end on Instagram.com. So that's _G Warner. Same at YouTube at _G Warner there as well, in case you want to, watch this in only a minute version as opposed to the 1 hour or so this will go. I'm going to go through the entire Bundesliga, give you some thoughts and what I'm thinking about the teams heading into the season. Of course, get ready to change your mind quite a bit because you never know what's going to happen in the German Bundesliga. If you're not following on Patreon, Twitter, YouTube, all those sort of things, do it at _G Warner. Patreon, the best spot for all my plays, leans, write-ups across all sports. If you leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, that'd be huge. Also would love subscriptions at _G Warner on YouTube, and that way you won't miss an episode and you get to see this live. If anyone has a comment they want me to cover, I do have them open. So let's get started, and we'll get in with the first most recent addition to the German Bundesliga, one of the two, and that is Holstein Kiel, worth about 32.5 million euros, according to Transfer Market. Pretty small valuation, but Holstein Kiel, honestly, have been flirting with getting promoted. They were second place finishers in the Schweizerliga, the second division in Germany. And it's going to be a tough situation for them to try to stay up. That's kind of going to be their number one aim for sure. In terms of their odds to be relegated, they are the favorites at even money. And there's good reason for it, though a lot of times the German Bundesliga will deal some surprises on who stays up. Marcel Rapp, their manager, was appointed in October of 2021. He's still around, and that's a good sign for keeping that all together. They have brought in 1 million euros in sales, and they've spent 3.2 million euros. Not a huge number, of course, low budget as you'd expect. But it's good to see them investing more than selling. They lost central midfielder Philipp Sander to Borussia Mönchengladbach for 1 million euros, and then a bunch of free transfers separate from that. In terms of arrivals, they spent 1 million on Magnus Knudsen from Football Club Rostov and Arman Gigovic, also from the same Football Club Rostov. Brought in Timotheus Puchac from Union Berlin, another team in the Bundesliga, and then have spent very small amounts on center backs. It looks like 200K from other teams in Germany. So not a lot of money here. And certainly that will be a big question for Holstein Kiel staying up this season. They have had success in the past, were nearly promoted a few seasons ago. It seems like there's going to be a lot of reliance on new players coming in, but also really what they've had in that squad for a long time. It looks like their most valuable player is a center back, 3 million euros, who's currently injured, Colin Klein-Beckel. Cruciate ligament injury is never good to see. They also have a defensive midfielder, Marko Ivicevic, and then no one else worth more than 3 million euros. So it's going to be an uphill battle for Holstein Kiel, but we'll see what happens with them. We'll move next to Football Club St. Pauli, winners of the Schweizerliga last season. I think lost their manager to Brighton and Hove Albion in the English Premier League. Of course, good things happen when you get promoted, but that's going to be a big question mark to see how they replace a newly appointed Alexander Blessin, who is definitely a face picture that I've seen before, appointed July 1st of this year, 2024. In terms of their expenditures, 1.8 million euros. They brought in 1.5 in income, so a little bit more spending, but still not big numbers to say the least. In terms of departures, they sold Eric da Silva Moreira, 1.5 million euros to Nottingham Forest. And in terms of what they brought in, they paid 200,000 euros for Robert Wagner from Sport Club Freiburg, the kit that I'm currently wearing. Also are loaning in Morgan Guilavogui from Racing Clubs de Lens out of Ligue 1 in France Finn Stevens, 600,000, right back from Brentford in the English Premier League, and Scott Banks, right winger from Crystal Palace. So they've done a lot of business for low amounts of money. Clearly, in the 49+1 rule, not a lot of money for I guess expenditures on players, but these were the champions of the Schweizer I feel like most promoted teams do stay up at least that first season. They really ride a lot of the continuity, but it's a little bit different with Alexander Blesson coming in at manager, considering their 31-year-old left for Brighton. So that's going to be a big question. We'll see what they kind of. I think it's really about a fast start, but I would trust. Even though worth less than 38 million euros compared to Bayern Munich at nearly 950 million, there's big differences between these two sides. But St. Pauli, they're going to be riding off last year's championship, and we'll see if they can stay in the league again this season. In terms of their likelihood to be relegated, they are plus 150, second most likely. 3 teams go down, but ultimately third place finisher, or third from last, third from bottom, plays in a relegation playoff, the Relegation, against the third place finisher of the Schweizer Liga. That was Bochum last year, and that's who we'll get to next. They're plus 225 to be relegated. VfL Bochum, one of the best fan supports out there. Really great home team, but that's probably not a huge surprise in soccer at this point, and especially considering really what they've done over the years. And actually, not next. We'll instead go to Football Club Heidenheim. They are third least valued according to Transfer Market. So sorry, Bochum will come next. Heidenheim, a little bit more unlikely to be relegated. They are, I guess, matched with Bochum right now, plus 225 for both of them. But Frank Schmidt, their manager, sticks around. That club player values 46, just over 46 million euros. Heidenheim, Frank Schmidt has been around for a long time. I think longest tenured now that Christian Streich has stepped down and retired from Sports Club Freiburg. Frank Schmidt was appointed in September of 2007. Wow, that's a long time ago. He's still around. In terms of business, they've brought in 15 million euros and they've only spent 2.5. Expenditures are a lot, but that's a lot of sales for a team that was not expected to stay in the Bundesliga, but were able to. Jan-Niklas Blesta, their creator, literally who found them or created a ton of goals off of corner kicks, set pieces, and such. He's gone to Benfica in Portugal for 8 million euros. Tim Kleindienst, the striker and hilarious after-match speaker, he says, I think he had one of the easy chances that he missed. He's like, it was so easy. I don't know how I missed it. He was sold for 7 million euros to Borussia Mönchengladbach, and they've lost some other players on free transfers. In terms of what they've spent, Michael Kaufmann, 1.25 million euros, center forward from Football Club Union Berlin, most likely in there to replace the Kleindienst at a 5.75 million surplus. Paul Vanner, a loan transfer midfielder from Bayern Munich. We'll see. Don't know that name very well. And they brought in some free transfers from Kaiserslautern and Darmstadt and also Saarbrücken. So we'll see if Frank Schmidt can do this back-to-back. It is very hard, especially for teams that were expected to be relegated, to stay up 2 seasons in a row. But and certainly replacing Jan-Niklas Blesta is going to be a big problem. But we'll see if Frank Schmidt is able to do this. They were a very aggressive, attacking, and I think high pressing team. Not often do you see teams promoted from the second division that play a lot of offensive football, but that's certainly what Heidenheim were able to do. We'll see without Jan-Niklas Blesta how much that changes. I would tip them as a team that could potentially be very relegation threatened this year. And that plus 225 might be worth a look later in the show. Move next to VfL Bochum, worth 57.28 million euros, very specific at Transfer Market. They barely stayed up last season. Amazing, because they looked like they had no business being in a relegation playoff, and then had a terrible swoon to end the season, sacked their manager, and things did not improve. In comes Peter Zeidler, manager, appointed July 1st, after they had a really rough relegation playoff. We're down a huge amount to Dusseldorf, but were able to overturn their arrears. I think especially on the road was very interesting. But they've sold 4.8 million euros worth of players and have not bought any. So that tells you a little bit about their finances. Patrick Osterhage, it was an unkept secret, was moving to Sport Club Freiburg for nearly 5 million euros. It's a big number. Kevin Stolger, a free transfer from Borussia Mönchengladbach was there last season and was at Bochum last season, has moved to Gladbach as well. They've done a lot of business from other clubs. It seems like the Borussia Mönchengladbach, die Fohlen, are the Bayern München of the past. They also lost Takuma Asano to La Liga Mallorca on a free transfer. So there's a lot missing. Stoller was taking penalties and was kind of their attacking midfield, I think he was really rallying the troops most of the time. Osterhaga, a good midfielder, gone. And Asano, one of their best goal scorers, a right winger, also not with the team or not with the club anymore. That's a big issue in terms of what they brought in. All free transfers. Ibrahima Sissoko, defensive midfielder from Strasbourg in France, just across the border a little bit, I guess, west of the German border. But Danny De Vit from AZ, Myron Boadu on loan from Monaco. He's a great player, so much speed, and has never really delivered. But there is some ability there. Ivan Ordetz has been kept from Dinamo Moscow, and Jakov Medic on loan from Ajax. So they've done some building, but not spent any money, it seems. That's a concern for sure. We'll see. Boadu is probably the best player that's ever been, biggest name that's ever been at VfL Bochum, but we'll see what he can deliver because he's really a speed guy, and we'll see if he can actually get loose because there's a lot of counterattacking that's expected, though we'll see what Peter Zeidler is able to put in place for a club that really was incredible that they even got into a relegation position. But Anthony Lozilla is still around. He's 38 years old, but their captain, defensive midfielder, when he's not there, that team is a disaster. Bernardo picked up an injury. That's an issue, but looks like a knock, so he should be back, worth 5.5 million euros. Might be their most valued player besides Boadu. Actually worth more than Boadu, and it was very important to them last season. We'll see with Manuel Riemann suspended. They've brought in Timo Horn, formerly of FC Köln. I'm very curious to see what they're starting at goalkeeper. But Bochum have lost a lot. They've replaced some. We'll see if Boadu can get off to a good start in his new club. And we know that they're going to play very, very well at home. Moving next to football, one FSV Mainz. 05, worth 75 million euros, so 3/4 of 100 million. They had an incredible surge at the end of last season and found a way from, I think, league bottom all the way to finding their way outside of the relegation zone, which is huge and a big, big end to last season. They seem to do that a lot, but are very, very good at turning their season around. They are 5-1 odds to get relegated, so but are ultimately the fifth least valued of clubs. So that says there's a little faith in the German market that Mainz will not have as much trouble this season. Bo Henriksen's still around after a great escape last season. They've sold 32.75 million euros worth of players, only spent 3.3. So a lot of that's from selling Gruda to Brighton Hove Albion for 30 million euros. They've lost Barreiro to Benfica on a free transfer. That's a big loss for them. The Luxembourg player, Tom Kraus, gone to Luton Town on a loan. Ludovic Ajorc gone to Stade Brest. And it looks like Delano Bourgzorg, young player, he is now gone 2.75 million euros to Middlesbrough. So they've been a lot of players have been taken from that team. What they've brought in, they spent 800,000 euros on a Wolfsburger AC, I think Austrian right back. That's not great. And then spent 2.5 million euros on Kaishu Sano, a defensive midfielder from, looks like the Japanese league, the Kashima Antlers. So and then brought in a second striker, Armindo Sieb from Bayern München on a loan. So I don't know what to say about this Mainz club. They still have Jonathan Burkhardt worth 12 million euros, trying to keep him so they can stay up this season. It does give me a little bit of pause to wonder if they can keep that all going, considering they've lost a lot. I don't see the Liverpool loanee in their defense in their roster anymore. So, and there's a lot of losses that have occurred here. We'll see if Mainz are able to keep that up. I would be a little bit more worried about them, especially with their history. Moving next to Football Club Augsburg, worth more than 100 million euros. I'm surprised the nearly 30 million euro gap between Augsburg and Mainz. They are more likely to be relegated according to the Bundesliga lines at BetOnline. If you're not a member of BetOnline, SportsBetting.ag, please follow the links to the podcast description, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on YouTube. We'll give you some free money for a free sign up and a great spot for 10-cent baseball lines below a certain number. You won't find that across many places in the betting landscape. Augsburg, 3-1 odds to be relegated. That makes them fifth most likely. They are coming off a pretty good season, I think, really based on their manager, a manager switch mid-season, and a pressing team that just got a lot better under Jes Thorup. He is still around, and that's important. They've sold 22.5 million euros worth of players and bought about 15. That's a lot of business for, especially after the disaster that was the Ricardo Pepi $20 million purchase years ago. Departures: Erdemir Demirovic gone to Stuttgart for 20 million euros. That was their goal scorer and captain. That's a big loss. Iago, left back, is left, I think, to go back to Brazil. Dion Belgio is gone for 300,000 euro loan fee to Rapid Vienna. That's a surprise. Ivan Cardona gone on loan to Espanyol in the top division in Spain, and Patrick Pfeiffer also gone to Young Boys on the loan transfer. But those feel like changes that were made, that maybe that those were chosen rather than losing players, loan fees for relatively smaller names. In terms of what they brought in, Christian Jakic was around last season, 5 million euro transfer fee from Eintracht Frankfurt. Kevin Stolterbeck from Sportclub Freiburg, 2.5 million euros, though he's playing at Bochum on loan. Certainly the weaker of the Schlotterbeck brothers, but certainly has some experience there. Steve Mounier brought in from Stade Brest, Brestois on a free transfer. That could be something very valuable. He might be a goal scorer that could replace Erdemir Demirovic. Looked very good in Liga over the years. They brought in a goalkeeper, Labrovic, 2.5 million euros from HNK Rijeka. I believe that's in one of the, I don't know where that is. Samuel Essende, also 4 million euros, center forward, spent on from Football Club Vizela. So looks like they brought in some center forwards, one free, one for 4 million euros after they sold for 21 million. Jakic also sticking around, Schlotterbeck moving in on center back. Could all be very important, and looks like upgrades at those positions. Pretty much a lot of questions about Augsburg and their offense ability, capabilities last season, but they were able to do it, really creating offense. What they did to Darmstadt was incredible. 6 goals in the first half, just forcing turnovers the entire time. I imagine that those sort of things might get figured out with longer time for Augsburg as manager Jes Thorup in this position. But clearly the Bundesliga market thinks that there's going to be a relegation fight in our hands, even though there's a big valuation difference between Augsburg and the rest of the bottom, 5 lower valuations. We'll move next to Werder Bremen, 3 million euros worth more than Augsburg. Big club, big history, but unfortunately it's really about momentum. And they were, I thought, pretty average last season / bad at times. Olivera is still there. He's been around, still only 36 years old. I think he came from Holstein Kiel initially, but moved to Werder Bremen when Kiel were denied in a relegation playoff, if I remember correctly. They've sold 5 million euros worth of players, but spent nearly 7. So that's a big signing, or I guess departure change there. Aaron Dinchy is gone to Sportclub Freiburg for 5 million euros, though he's playing at Heidenheim last year. Another player gone from Heidenheim. We'll see how they deal with that. Nick Voltemade, unkept secret, moving to Stuttgart on a free transfer. David Kodnachi, loan transfer to Dusseldorf, and looks like some other players retired, and really backups, not much important to talk about. In terms of what they brought in, central midfielder Skelly Alvaro from Olympique Lyonnais young players development agency, worth nearly 5 million euros. Marco Gruel from Rapid Vienna on a free transfer, left winger. Kika Top from center forward from Schalke 04, 2 million euros, and looks like a very cheap goalkeeper as well to possibly replace Yuri Pavlenka, who's moved on. I don't know that I trust much about this offense. It's nice to see Romano Schmid after playing in Euros for Austria this summer. In Jinma, it's really important. Justin Jinma, like 23 years old, right winger. He's going to probably be the most important thing, as well as Marvin Dush, who's still around at 9 million euros in valuation. Jinma, same 9 million euros. Schmid, 10 million. So there's some value in their attackers, a lot more than what they have in their defense. That's a big question. Marco Friedel, their captain and center back, is still around. That's important. And we'll see what happened. Amos Pipa is gone with a relegation, with a red card suspension, I guess, from the DFB Pokal. So not relevant to league play, but somewhat relevant coming through the rest of this season. He's also hurt. So we'll see. Big questions, but Zederer is taking that goalkeeping job. And to give you an idea of where Werder Bremen are to be relegated, they're up to plus 550. So there's a big, I guess, group of teams 5-1 and above. So that doesn't put them as big of a fear, though I'm not convinced that their defense will be good enough for whatever straight year. Moving next to Football Club Union Berlin. So they are worth about 127 million euros. Incredible run to Champions League last season, then falling apart, brought in a new manager, and he's no longer around. Both Svensson is coming in, who resigned from his post as the manager of Mainz last season when they were bottom of the league. I do like him, and I think he's a capable manager. They've sold about 15 million euros worth of players, bought 12 and a half. So that's pretty good signings in terms of a team that literally was taking blood donations and plasma, taking that money to then build a stadium way back when. Incredible rise. And I think staying in the league last year was a big threat for them. Sad to see Otto Fischer not around anymore. But in terms of departures, they sold Jimmy Leveling to Stuttgart, but he was already gone. Issa Ladouni, he's gone 4.5 million euros to somewhere in the oil countries. Alex Kral on loan to Espanyol, really never took. Morten Thorsby on to Genoa for 4 million euros. It's a pretty big sale considering I don't know how important he was. Arrivals, they've paid 5 million euros for a left back from Dortmund. That's a bit of a surprise. I guess they have also brought in Leopold Kerfeld, the center back from Rapid Vienna, Lazo Benisch from Hamburg, 3 million euros. I want to say he was somewhere else in the Bundesliga last season, and a center forward. So literally they've done their big buy was in defense. There's a center back and a left back. So that's really nice to see, especially for a team that should play pretty defensively. I really did like what Bo Svensson did at Mainz. Nolfum graduate or former player, should see a pretty good performance from Union. I feel like they'll probably get more to their roots because they tried to prepare for Champions League, brought in a lot of new players, had to play a little bit differently, and really just couldn't balance multiple competitions, which they'd shown in the past, but they stayed in the league, and that's important. They are currently 5.5 to 1 to be relegated. So there's a big glut of teams that potentially get relegated. I'm trying to see if there's other interests to like 20 to 1 odds to finish in the top 4. I don't see that occurring. So I'll move on to the next club on the list. And that is the TSG Hoffenheim, worth nearly 139 million euros. American manager Pellegrino Matarazzo was rumored to potentially be taking the United States national team job, but opted to stay in Deutschland. In terms of, they've sold about 30 million euros worth of players and bought 28 million. So that's a pretty good sign. A lot of money there. Maximilian Bayer and his great future has moved on to Borussia Dortmund for 28.5 million euros. It's pretty much everything right there. They also lost Julian Justvan, a attacking midfielder who didn't seem that important to me. Skov gone, John Brooks gone. I think Skov is probably the biggest loss of those, but Bayer certainly more than anyone. In terms of arrivals, they paid 18 million euros for Adam Hlošek from Bayer Leverkusen, which is a bit surprising because he did not do much there. Also paid Sturm Graz in Austria 9.5 million euros for a left midfielder. So those are two pretty big moves, big expenditures for a club that doesn't really do too much. I mean, most of these German teams are extremely poor. We see Ilas Bebu, who's currently a return unknown from knee surgery. That's not great. I think that the big, I guess, is seeing what they can get out of Andre Kramaric, the Croatian who played in the Euros this summer, 33 years old, worth 5 million euros still. I'm very curious to see how he works with Adam Hlošek, their new big signing. I still can't imagine how they spent that much money. But we'll see what this team looks like. Florian Grillitsch, defensive midfielder, had filled in at center back last season and done pretty well. Oliver Baumann, their longtime captain, goalkeeper, still around. I just have never really. I do like Matarazzo, not just because he's American, and I'm recording this from Dallas, Texas, on August 22nd. But there's some questions I have about this team. Let's see what they are. I don't think they're a top 4 threat, really. So to me, it's only can look at relegation. And they are a whopping 10 to 1 odds. So there's a lot of faith in Pellegrino Matarazzo, apparently, in the Bundesliga market. Moving next to Borussia Mönchengladbach, worth nearly 160 million euros. They are opening at home with Bayer Leverkusen, so that's a great start, or potentially a tough one. Gerardo Seoane is still around. I thought there was some potential that he might not return after a pretty disappointing season, but maybe he stuck around because they've bought some players. 8 million euros they spent, only brought in 300,000. So as I've mentioned, a couple players that they were bought off of other clubs in the Bundesliga. It seems like they are making those other teams weaker and trying to grow themselves, but we'll see what that ends up turning into. They've lost Christoph Kramer, Patrick Herrmann, Simon Walde, Tony Janschke. Those are not big losses at all. Kramer, probably the most important of those, though he wasn't playing as much as I thought. Already mentioned the Kleindienst signing from Heidenheim for 7 million euros, Stolgerin from Bochum. Also interesting because I thought he used to play at Köln, big rival of Leverkusen. Philipp Sander in for 1 million euros, center midfielder from Holstein Kiel. And then Charles Herrmann, a free transfer in from Dortmund, left winger, but didn't pay any money, so probably wasn't that big of a deal. Big question is kind of what can Seoane turn this team into? He's an offensive manager to a fault. There was really bad defense in this team. They didn't score a lot of goals last year, which is a really bad combo. But Jonas Omlin should be back, their captain goalkeeper. Hopefully he'll have a healthy season. If you're a De Follin supporter, I don't really see them being anywhere near the top of this table. 8-1 to be relegated. If you're looking for a long shot there, that might be worth potentially looking into. Moving next to the Sports Club Freiburg, the kit that I'm wearing today. They opened with Stuttgart, feels like for the second straight season, worth 181.5 million euros, and have a new manager in Julian Schuster, 39 years old. We'll see if he can stay along as Christian Streich did. I'll bet that he will not. They have spent more money than they actually brought in, so that's a little bit surprising. They sold nearly 6 million euros worth of players. They have spent nearly 11, so that's a big thing. But Freiburg, they are a team that have certainly brought in a lot of money from their European ambitions and European success, so that certainly helped. Kevin Schlotterbeck gone to Augsburg, but he was on loan at Bochum, so not a big loss there. Yannick Keitel, who's playing fill-in center back, a center defensive midfielder. He's on to Stuttgart. Hugo Sique on to Bruges. Robert Wagner on loan to St. Pauli. And that's, I mean, I'm not sure any of these names were huge. Keitel did play a lot last season for Freiburg, but it's because they were just so injury plagued last season in their defense. What they brought in, though, I think does say a lot. Aaron Dinchy, who was from Werder Bremen, but on loan at Heidenheim. That was transfer was known as was Patrick Osterhage from Bochum. Maximilian Philipp was already on the squad, but that move has been, I guess, confirmed from Wolfsburg, and then other names that don't seem to matter too much. Big question is what this team is going to look like under a new manager. I would imagine that it was a lot about Christian Streich, but also about the strategy, the style, and a really good youth development type of squad. I wonder about potential sale of Roland Scholloy, but that's not happened yet. The Hungarian, 15 million euros in value. They're great at really, honestly, Freiburg are great at finding great deals, and I expect them to continue to do so. And we'll see what happens with Noah Atobolu, their goalkeeper, who basically played every second they could last season trying to get his valuation up, I believe. 22 years old, worth 10 million euros. But I think Florian Müller, who played no minutes last season, I do think he's still a capable goalkeeper, but we'll see how long it takes to get that rust off. I could be a little bit biased because it's the team I follow the closest, and I even play a FIFA 20 from way back when, season that I've been Dynasty, whatever career mode they've been doing for a long time. They're currently, they're 5.5 to 1 to be relegated. But honestly, I feel like there's some possibilities. Top four finish is probably too high to finish the Champions League position. But I got to say, 14-1 odds, if this new manager takes, which might just be a representation of the club, it's probably not enough, but that does interest me for sure. And I'm trying not to be biased to that assertion. Moving next to VfL Wolfsburg, 220 million euros in valuation nearly. They open with Bayern München. That should be tough. I will be doing a Friday episode getting you ready for the weekend 2, or the opening weekend of the Bundesliga. Couldn't get it in last weekend, but we'll hear. Ralf Hasenhüttl, who had came in after Niko Kovac was sacked midway through last season. He stuck around. They've bought nearly 30 million euros worth of players. That's a lot. Only sold 2.5. As we're seeing as we get higher up in the table. And there's clearly some expectations that Wolfsburg were big underachievers last season. In terms of departures, they lost Václav Černý to Rangers for 1.5 million euros on loan. Koen Casteels is gone to Saudi Arabia. Surprising. He was, I thought, trying to get to England. But Luka Waldschmidt gone to Köln. He was there last season. Maximilian Philipp was already gone. So what they've lost, Černý is about it, and their goalkeeper, which is saying something. Their rivals, they've paid 3 million euros on loan for Mohamed Amoura, a center forward from Union Saint-Gilloise. Kamil Grabarov, goalkeeper from FC Copenhagen, spent nearly 14 million euros. That will be their new starter. And he looked good in what little limited I've seen of him. They spent 11 €750,000 for from PAOK for Konstantinos Kouliakis, Greek center back. So there's a lot being done, a lot of money spent, certainly in that defense. Dardai coming in on a free transfer from Hertha Berlin, and Marius Müller, €1.5 million as a goalkeeper from Schalke 04. So they've done a ton in the goalkeeping position, and it should be pretty well, I guess. I mean, maybe they just had no goalkeepers and had to do what they could. Big question. Hasenhüttl is certainly, we've seen his times at Southampton in the English Premier League. He's going to play 3 center backs, and they're going to be aggressive. I'm very interested to see what that turns into this season. They certainly have spent a lot on goalkeeper. They've got Maxence Lacroix worth €20 million as a center back. If he can stop getting red cards, that'd be huge. Moritz Jens, also capable. Bornau, good as well. Jessica, honestly, has looked good to me as well. So they've done a lot of expenditures there, and honestly, it could be a good team. Though we had those expectations last season, it didn't really seem to come through. Not really sure if that will this season, but I think there's clearly some money being spent, and that does give me some interest in potentially Hasenhüttl, who's proven himself to be a good manager before, to do something in this league. He's, I think, Austrian, so he's been around the Bundesliga previously. In terms of top 4 finish, VfL Wolfsburg, they are 11-1 odds to finish in the Champions League position. Big jump for them, but to be relegated, they are actually 10-1 odds, similar to Hoffenheim, worth a lot more money though. So I would trust them a lot more and their manager, I got to say, than I would Hoffenheim. Moving next to Eintracht Frankfurt, worth over €250 million. They open with Dortmund. Looks like Dino Topmuller has stuck around. They have sold 46+ million euros worth of players, only spot about 33. A lot of that being Ugo Ekitike from PSG. He came in for 16.5 million euros, but William Pacho went the other way for 40 million euros. That's a big loss for their defense. Jakic already gone, Paxton Harrison on loan, Smolcic on loan, and Ferry on loan. Not a big deal. Just really Pacho losing a starting center back every season. That's a big deal. In terms of arrivals, they brought in Arthur Theat, Belgian, who played in the Euros this summer. Could play left back most likely, but listed as center back. He's on loan. Robin Koch has signed officially from Leeds. Can Ushun, attacking midfielder, 11 million euros from Nuremberg, and that's potentially something. And Rasmus Christensen on loan as a right back from Leeds as well. So certainly pillaged Leeds quite a bit on loan and a free transfer. The Koch was playing last season for Eintracht Frankfurt. I mean, honestly, Topmuller was really struggling to score goals last season. That should be a lot easier with Ekitike's addition, plus Marmouche sticking around. Ansgar Knauf is still a really good player as well. I'm curious to see what Alidu does as well, left winger on loan from FC Köln, or was on loan, has returned. Götze is still there, of course, in his World Cup successes in the past. Skiri, one of the most important players in their defensive midfield. So this team should be good. I'm very curious to see what they can put this year. Tuta still around, 12 million euro, Brazilian, still important. And honestly, looks like the third most valued center back. So there's a lot of talent here. Eintracht Frankfurt, I thought were very good. Their pitch at home is horrible, but I think they are a potential top pick for potentially finishing the top 4. They're currently 5-1 odds to finish top 4, and that certainly would be an interesting position to put them in. Let's see, Bundesliga standings 2024. I'm curious because I want to see what European commitments they have. So they will be in the Europa League, which does unfortunately tighten that schedule quite a bit. Playing Thursdays somewhere in a smaller area and then going deep in that competition and then having to play Sundays. That's very little rest. So they need depth, and that's going to be a big question for Eintracht and potentially what they can put up this season. We'll move next to VfB Stuttgart. Speaking of teams that are making big jumps, they were incredible last season. Amazing. They finished second in the league, but unfortunately they now have to deal with Champions League, and that's going to be a big question for them. I think Alexander Nubel, goalkeeper, sticking around. That's important. I think he's on a 2-year loan, I want to say, from Bayern Munchen. Sebastian Hoeneß, who's been so good since taking that job over, he's still around. That's important. They've brought in about as much as they sold, in the 60s of millions of euros. So a lot of expenditures, but for good reason. They lost their Guirassy. Unfortunately, they're huge goal scorer. He's gone to Dortmund for 18 million euros. Hiroki Ito, center back to Bayern München. Valdemar Anton, also to Borussia Dortmund for 22.5 million euros. Ito for 23.5. Michael Isha was already gone at Darmstadt, so not a huge loss. And Gil Diaz, also not a big issue. But replacing two center backs that were started for them last season is a big concern, as well as their top goal scorer. That's going to be a big change. In terms of arrivals, though, they spent 21 million euros on Demirovic from Augsburg. He'll likely partner after such success last season with Dennis Undav for 27 million euros or so. Jamie Leveling coming in from Union. Jeff Chabot, a center back to replace the two that they lost, but only 4 million euros to buy him from a relegated Köln. And then, honestly, that's going to be the big question. How do they replace their defense? How do they balance playing their best players twice a week? Those are big concerns for me. I'm not sure that they have a lot, or I'm not sure they're done in adding to their defense. And I got to say, staring at Real from Toulouse, Chabot in from Köln, Dan Axel Zagadou, who's never been healthy. It seems very thin center back position. So I don't know that I love their chances to finish in a Champions League position again. They're 2-1 odds to finish there. I don't necessarily see that occurring. I don't know that relegation is potential, but Stuttgart at 66-1. I mean, gigantic number, but they have some big holes to fill, and I think it's going to take them a little while to get those holes filled. Moving next to Leipzig, worth nearly 500 million euros. So we are climbing big time from 268 to 500, nearly double. So we can see where the big differences in the club. Marco Rosa is still around. I think he's a Leipzig man. They've sold 63 million euros worth of players. No big deal. They bought about 41 million euros. So not big surprise. The biggest of that fee was 55 million euros. Dani Olmo to Barcelona. We'll see if he actually gets registered. Angelino gone for 5.2 million euros to Roma, but he was already gone. Alex Moraiba on loan to Celta Vigo, but he never took on or really did anything. Blažević gone to Red Bull Salzburg for 1 million euros, their sister club in Austria. So goalkeeper is going to be interesting. They did buy Martin van der Voort from Genk in Belgium for 10 million euros. Asen Ouedraogo from Schalke 04, he's in for 10 million euros. Antonio Nusa in for 21 million euros from Bruges. So, I mean, you never doubt the talent in this club. I guess Andre Silva has returned from Sociedad after not really playing too much for them. So we're going to be figuring out what this team will look like. Xavi Simons, probably the biggest deal to keep him on loan from Paris Saint-Germain for another season, 80 million euros. Big deal there. And we'll see what this team looks like. I mean, they're going to be very deep, very talented, as they always are. Gulashi, 34 years old, club captain at times, I guess, and Willi Orban was out, but Orban's still around, still has the tag. I think big question of what Van der Voort does and if he can take the job. Was Blažević deserved it for a lot of the season when Gulashi was hurt last year. This team's really good. I would be very afraid to fade them. They couldn't really score goals last season, but that was the big downfall. They were minus 180 to finish top four, and I can't see why, especially being worth double as much as plus 200, fifth place most likely finishing team, according to those Champions League finish odds. Move next to Borussia Dortmund, worth over 500 million euros, but pretty close to Leipzig, especially considering where these clubs have come from. Nuri Sahin is their new manager in for Edin Terzic, and we'll see what he delivers. They spent 80 million euros on players, only receive about 34, so that's some big expenditures. Center forward, they sold Niklas Füllkrug, replaced him with Ciro Guirassy for 9 million euros difference. That might be a win, though Füllkrug certainly scored a ton of goals, and we'll see how Guirassy comes on. Also, the 5 million euro sale of Tom Rote to Union Berlin is something. But they brought in Maximilian Bayer, a younger player who certainly will be a really great option for them. Paid 4 million to loan Jan Couto in from Manchester City, but via Girona in Spain. Champions League contender and team participant this season. Valdemar Anton on from Stuttgart as well for 22.5 million euros. And Pascal Gross is coming back to Germany from Brighton Hove Albion for 7 million euros. That's a lot of expenditures for a team that's used to being a selling club, coming off a really poor Bundesliga season. I'm not really as much of a believer in Dortmund, but I expect just how much they're valued. They're minus 225 to finish in the top four. I would probably pick Leipzig to finish more likely to finish in a Champions League position, considering both are in the Champions League this season. No real benefit to playing in that competition. But the big question for me is when Leipzig are going to sell, because they are more likely to sell than Dortmund are, certainly. Move next to, I guess, might as well mention title odds as well. Leipzig 14-1 odds, Dortmund 10-1 odds. I think I like Leipzig more than I like Dortmund at this point, but apparently I'm alone compared to the Dortmund, the German Bundesliga market. 2 more teams to go of the 18, and then we'll get out of here with a best bet end of show. Bayer 04 Leverkusen worth over 6,500, so 655 million euros. Have done an incredible job keeping Xabi Alonso around, and how could you doubt after how well they played last year, basically going the entire season unbeaten until the Europa League final, if I remember correctly, against Atalanta. They have spent 53 million euros. They brought in 26, so they're trying to claim their position and stay there. In terms of what they've sold, Adam Ploshek for 18 million euros to Hoffenheim, Sardar Azmoun to Shabab Ahli, so another oil destination. Patrick Pence, 2.5 million euros somewhere in Sweden. He is not good, so I wouldn't be worried about that. This team is going to be great. They brought in Alex Garcia from Girona for 18 million euros, Martin Terrier from Rennes, also Jean-Noel Belosian, the center back from Rennes, for 15 million euros. I don't know how you could, after the incredible transfer market that they had, transfer window that they had last season before the season started, I don't know how you could doubt this team. Honestly, the Bayer Leverkusen are awesome, and I mean, they are just such a great team. I got to say, we'll see what happens with how they, I guess, live up to those expectations. But interestingly enough, they are underdogs to Bayern Munchen to win the Bundesliga. That seems like an interesting number to say the least. Yes, they will be playing in the Bundesliga compared to the Europa League, but that to me was a more taxing competition last year. I'm very, very curious to see how this team takes on and takes off, really, compared to Bayern Munchen, we'll get to last. So Bayern Munchen worth 947 million euros versus the 855 or 655. So they're worth more. So maybe that's why they are valued where they currently are. But when I look at this club, I mean, I just don't really know that I trust much of Bayern Munchen. It's a company coming in from Burnley. I liked his outspoken manager about getting screwed by refereeing decisions. And I think getting rookie referees put on his games, they're relegated sides, and then getting screwed from it. I respect that completely, but I don't know. This is such a bad Bayern Munchen team from last season. Didn't even get into the Super Cup last year, or didn't qualify up to start this season. I mean, finishing third place, a distant 18 points behind Leverkusen. I just am not a believer. Maybe it's too obvious because it's exactly what happened last season, but to see them favored, certainly based on experience, but in terms of departures, they lost Matthias de Ligt to Manchester United, not a big loss. Neither was Mazraoui, right back. Malik Tillman gone to PSV for 12 million euros, and then they loaned out Zaragoza, who they panicked and brought in mid-year last season. In terms of what they brought in, Olise, 53 million euros is great. Joao Palhinha, really important defensive midfielder as well. Hiroki Ito to help in their center backs, but and then Eric Dyer on a free transfer, which I don't know what he's doing at this club, honestly. The big deal is can Harry Kane do what, I guess, I mean, he scored a ton of goals last year. He is 31 years old. Maybe he'll be a lot better in a second season in the German Bundesliga, but sheesh, I feel like there's a lot to be asked of this Bundesliga or this Bayern Munchen side to really improve. Thomas Muller, 34. We'll see how Olise comes in. It probably helps having another English speaker and Leroy Sané as well. Spent a lot of time in England with Manchester City. So you can never talk about not having enough talent in this team. Musiala, especially with the great Euros at 21 years old, worth 130 million euros, gigantic. This team is going to be great, but the big question is, can they defend? And can we trust Vincent Kompany, which I would much prefer to have Xabi Alonso on my side, I got to say. In terms of other threats, I think that's something we need to think about, but I'll get through that a little bit when I'm further away from just talking about these teams. But Min Jae Kim, we'll see what he does was incredible at Napoli, but certainly did not take on or catch on in the German Bundesliga last season. Maybe just going to take a year. We'll see with, I guess, a broken foot to Hiroki Ito. Not great. And if that means more time with Dio Upamecano, one of the best athletes, but honestly has so many mistakes in his game, I think there's a lot of problems in defense here, and that's always been a concern for Bayern Munchen. So we're now later in the episode. Thank you all for tuning in, especially if you're watching this live. But if you're watching on, I guess, replay, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. If you are on, if you are on YouTube, please subscribe at @thereal_G Warner. That'd all be very, very helpful. About to get into an ultimate best bet, but want to go through the numbers a little bit, so we're not going team by team, as that might be a little bit better way to hear it all. German Bundesliga to win the Bundesliga, -180 are Bayern Munchen. Leverkusen +240. I can tell you where these numbers have moved since I've been tracking them. So Bayern have fallen from -200 to -180. Leverkusen from 250 to 240. So that tells me that other teams are getting bet besides Bayern Munchen, clearly Bayer Leverkusen. And that is definitely an example of how well they performed last season. However, we'll see if the splashes and the transfers, I don't think they can do it as well as they did last year, but we'll see. Dortmund also down from 11-1 to 10-1, drop of nearly 10%, a little over 9%, I guess. That could mean something, but we'll see. I just don't know that I trust a new manager there, nor can you trust Dortmund whatsoever. Leipzig have stayed pat at 14-1 odds and probably deserve to be there as well, though I do think that they have a decent chance to catch Dortmund. In terms of top four finishes, we have Bayern Munchen at -10,000. So a lot of expectations there. That has not moved at all. Leverkusen from -400 to -600. That's an increase of 50%. That's a lot of money coming in, saying that they will finish at least in the top four. And I got to say, I think that's pointing towards their likelihood to potentially win this title as well. Borussia Dortmund have increased from -200 to -225. Leipzig from -155 to -180. So pretty much all the top four have been getting bet to finish top four. At least all the top four from this season, expectation-wise, have maintained since I've been tracking this on August 8th. It's now August 22nd into the 23rd as the season starts today. Stuttgart have climbed from +175 to 2-1. Eintracht from 4 to 5-1. Gladbach from 450 to 8-1. I don't know how they are priced that way, but honestly, that is a relegation side if there's ever one to think about. I'm not so interested in odds to win Bundesliga without Bayern Munchen, as I don't think they're the most likely team to win it. So moving now to the relegation numbers. These are the first times I've seen them, and I'll remind you where we were. Holstein Kiel, newly promoted, even money. St. Pauli +150. They were champions of the Schweizerliga second division last season. Second most likely to be relegated. It probably deserved, though. I would think if there's a team that stays in, that's a relegated side, it's probably the champions of last season. Bochum down to +225. They're third most likely. Heidenheim tied for third, I guess, with Bochum at +225. Football Club Augsburg 3-1 odds, though they are worth a lot more money than Football Club Mainz 05 at 5-1 odds. Freiburg 550, Union 550, Werder Bremen 550. That's, to me, a unique look, because honestly, I think Freiburg is the best class of those three by far. We'll see what Union Berlin does under Bo Svensson. He literally resigned last season when he was leading his team to last place in the Bundesliga, but they were miraculously able to stay up. He kind of pulled that Houdini act a couple seasons ago, so who knows what to say about that. Werder Bremen at 5.5 to 1 does seem very interesting to me as a potential relegation option, but I'm not sure that I'll bet it. As for Borussia Mönchengladbach, 8-1 odds to get relegated. That seems very, very high for a team that I think will have a lot of struggles. We'll see if Gerardo Seoane can keep his job. Moving next to Hoffenheim 10-1, Wolfsburg 10-1. I don't know. I think Hoffenheim is far more likely to be relegated than Wolfsburg, but ultimately that might be a little bit too far away. So it's time for the ultimate best bet. If you're not a member of Patreon, do it. Patreon.com/real_G Warner. Best spot for all my plays. These right across all sports. If you want to know what I'm playing, get the prices that I'm getting, download the app, turn on notifications, and you literally get a buzz every time I lock something in. That's huge. And then, of course, thank you for supporting the other podcasts in this network, Betting the Pitch, with baseball, with A Brooks Bets. Easy for me to say at this hour. Also, we have NFL stuff coming out. I think we'll do a Tuesday night episode at A_Schnicker, getting you ready for week one. We've already done NFC, AFC, regular season totals, win totals, also a Super Bowl episode coming, or that came earlier in the season. Plenty of stuff coming out, plus plenty of soccer stuff coming on this channel. So please subscribe, tell your friends, and I will certainly appreciate all the help you can get with growing this brand, growing this thing, and more likes, more positive comments, all those sort of things, the more I'll do more episodes because he'll force me to do so, force the hand. So it's time for the ultimate best bet. I think it's time to get into it now. So let's do it as soon as I can pull these lines together in front of me, where the heck did they go? Okay. It is now time. Let's start. Hopefully the Golden Girls in the background, everyone will enjoy. Hey, this is the Real_G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. You've just watched, hopefully, the entire German Bundesliga season, team by team, going through transfer moves, managerial changes, all those sort of things, getting ready for the German Bundesliga kicking off on August 23rd, recording this late night, August 22nd. But you're here for an ultimate best bet, which I put on all the channels at the Real_G Warner on YouTube and Instagram, and of course, anywhere you can, especially on Twitter at the Real_G Warner. But for my best bet on this episode, if you're not a member of Patreon, check it out, patreon.com/the Real_G Warner. Best spot for all my plays, leans right up across all sports. I'm going to go. It's an easy call here because Bayer Leverkusen were so dominant last season. I'll take plus 240 on last season's champions to repeat. I think Bayern München have too many problems in defense. Borussia Dortmund have problems everywhere. Leipzig are just too young and are willing to sell it in January. So take Leverkusen plus 240 to win the German Bundesliga in 2024-25. And that'll do it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. I will talk to you all likely in the next few hours for a Friday episode talking about all Saturday's action.
Recording stopped.